Thanks, Mayuri. That's really great. It's lovely to see some familiar faces on such a great number of folks who've joined us today on the webinar. And I'll look forward to hearing questions that you might have at the end of the presentation that I do. Before I begin, though, I do need to acknowledge the Wadawurrung as the traditional owners of the land, waterways and skies on which I am MS Teamsing in to you today. Pay my respects to elders past, present, and of course emerging. So in Mayuri's analogy of the chicken and the egg, I would describe the City of Greater Geelong as perhaps being the egg in that analogy. The egg which came first, wanting to find a solution to a problem that we have that existed on the market. And so we went out to the market looking for chickens, I guess you could call them, to come and help us to solve that problem that we identified. And because of our experience of using the procurement for innovation methodology, we've also been interested in applying that methodology a couple of times since then. So I'll just share with you my screen. And as I mentioned, if there are questions that you have and you think of them at the time that we're presenting, please, by all means, share them in the chat. And if you'd rather speak them, then I'm more than happy for you at the end of my presentation to be able to ask those questions directly. I do know that what I'm about to present to you does tend to generate some questions, but if you can't think of them, I'm sure I'll be able to share some answers to things that I know folks are often interested in knowing about when they hear about the procurement for innovation method. So today I'll go through what the method is and where we've borrowed it from, why you'd want to use it, and also I'll give you some case study information about how we've applied the methodology for a specific procurement and then some subsequent procurements. And I'll finish up by giving you a little bit of insight into some e-learning that we have been lucky enough to have been able to have developed during our journey so that we can share our lessons learned with other folks. So first of all, the method itself, as Mayuri quite fabulously described, it's a method that stimulates market demand and supply through public sector procurement in the first instance by using public sector buying power to stimulate the market to come up with new solutions and new innovations which don't already exist. But what we have discovered over time is that indeed the private sector can use the methodology too. It's very much about solving problems by looking for solutions to what we call unmet needs. And by that, we're referring to solutions that don't already exist on the market. And there are a number of key things that we look for in a procurement for innovation unmet need that's quite different to traditional procurement and the process that we use in traditional procurement. The reasons we use procurement for innovation are many and varied, and here are some of them on the left-hand side, the four things there, the headings that I'll go through. Four major reasons why we use procurement for innovation, because it's usually the easiest option to, particularly in the public sector, to repeat purchase what's been bought in the past. But what we know is that if we speak to suppliers and we engage with them through our procurement processes, suppliers, supplies and markets obviously evolve over time, and organisations often don't know what's available if only they were to ask the market. So it's a really important point of difference that procurement for innovation opens you up to, is to be able to explore how the market is able to respond to unmet needs that you might have before you go to a tender phase. In procurement for innovation, we also challenge traditional procurement because often suppliers and contractors are able to deliver innovative solutions to problems and challenges that we have in the public sector and have, as I mentioned, in the private sector too, but they don't always get the opportunity to supply them because we're either in too much of a hurry, which, anyone in the public sector who procures and possibly procurement generally everything's got to be done yesterday, or we perhaps are a little bit too risk averse in our thinking to be able to open up that sense of what could we procure if we were outcomes focused. And Mayuri mentioned that earlier. I'll come back to that a little bit later on. Enabling new solutions is another reason why we use procurement for innovation, because it's about opening up these opportunities for the market to deliver new solutions with, as Mayuri quite rightly pointed out, with the knowledge that at the end of their engagement in this whole process, there is going to be a tender exercise. That's one of the big draw cards for suppliers to participate in a procurement for innovation process with buyers, is that there's going to be a tender at the end of the process. And outcomes. Oops, I'll just go back to outcomes. Outcomes here are about the outcomes that are directly related to strategic intentions that an organisation will have. And Mayuri talked about how we have output specifications that we are interested in describing to the market. And those are directly related to the kinds of outcomes that, particularly for us in the public sector, we want to achieve for our community. So the outcomes that we link to a procurement for innovation exercise are very much strategic. And more often than not, where procurement for innovation has been applied elsewhere, they're linked to sustainability outcomes. And by that, I mean perhaps environmental outcomes, social outcomes, or indeed economic growth outcomes. The public sector and businesses may need solutions for which no commercially proven product or service currently exists, and that's what we call an unmet need, and that's certainly been our experience at the City of Greater Geelong. So an innovative solution is often needed, and the way in which we bring it to market has to be done in an innovative way. And the best way we've found at local council level to do that is by applying the procurement for innovation method. The way in which procurement for innovation is quite different from traditional procurement is that it's about bringing products or services to market that have impact, that are strategic, so directly aligned with whatever your public-facing strategic intentions are, and are replicable. And that bit's really important, because in order to engage suppliers in the whole process, they need to know that if they're going to generate a solution for you, that there are going to be other potential buyers of that solution. It becomes a really important part of the conversation with the suppliers, that they're generating a solution to a problem that not just you have, but that others will have. And there's an example in particular I'll share with you in a moment where that became really important for the suppliers who created a solution for the UK, Her Majesty's Prison Service, Her Majesty's at that time Prison Service, who were able to actually go on and sell their solution if they were unsuccessful in that procurement to other sectors. So I'll tell you about that in a moment. But in terms of having impact and being strategic, coming back to this slide here, the bullet point lists are often things that we in certainly public sector, but indeed private sector more and more now, will actually want to look at as impacts of the way in which we either operate or indeed these days the way in which we procure. So we want to know that the way in which we procure in some organisations is about improving the health of our community, or about reducing environmental degradation, or about achieving safer roads, or perhaps it's about low carbon energy supply. And because we make this variety of commitments in for us at local council, a whole host of strategic documents that are generated for and with our community, we want to then make sure that we're fulfilling these kinds of strategic, impactful intentions, both in the way that we operate and indeed in the way that we procure our goods and services. And so for the examples I'm about to show you for how the City of Greater Geelong has used the method, we applied the method to address our strategic intentions, in particular around employment for long-term unemployed and disadvantaged folks in our community, to adhere to that strategic and impactful intention around reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and also to achieve our commitments to a circular economy. And where those kinds of strategic intentions are often illustrated for us at the City of Greater Geelong are many and varied, as I mentioned. So we have a community-led vision, which was generated some years ago now with a very thorough consultative process with our community, and we call that Greater Geelong, a clever and creative future vision. So our procurement exercises are intended to adhere to that clever and creative future vision, and in it there are commitments to a whole host of things that our community wants to see happen, including things like sustainable solutions and sustainable development. Our UNESCO City of Design, the City of Greater Geelong is a UNESCO City of Design. We're the only one in Australia which commits us to Sustainable Development Goal 11. That's the one around sustainable cities and communities. So we very much use our UNESCO City of Design designation to encourage suppliers and our community to be more aware of the Sustainable Development Goals and indeed to drive the way in which we function as an organisation. And the Geelong Region Regional Opportunities for Work project is one that several large-scale organisations in our community have signed up to. It's a compact that commits us to creating employment opportunities for folks from disadvantaged or long-term unemployed backgrounds, and City of Greater Geelong has signed up to that compact. So any of our procurement exercises indeed list the GROW program in them as an indication of some of the employment opportunities that we'd like to provide. But we have strategic goals and intentions in a whole host of things, and what those strategic goals enable us to do through Procurement for Innovation is look at some of the outcomes or outputs that we want to achieve when we're running a procurement, and we can reflect that in our specifications and indeed our contract requirements so that we can come back and report on that and illustrate to our community that we are indeed delivering outcomes to those strategic intentions. And the way we do that is through the process, and there's 4 stages for Procurement for Innovation. And in that very first stage, we very much ask ourselves about what we're trying to achieve, how we're currently doing that, and could we do it better? And how could we meet the intended outcomes that we have in conjunction with working with the market, and how we're going to measure progress against that? These are all things that we work through in indeed the first part of the process of Procurement for Innovation.